Good afternoon. Today is Monday, June 8th, 2020, and I'm Derek Hodges with Pointe Wealth Management. Welcome to the Anchor Point Education Series, where today we will discuss cybersecurity. Everyone is in listen-only mode to maintain audio quality. Please use the chat function to ask any questions. We will strive to answer all of your questions today, but be sure to hang around till the end to hear more about the companion training that we're going to be doing later this month on better protecting your mobile devices. So let's begin. 2 seconds. 2 seconds is all it takes to become a victim of identity theft. Last year, over 14 million people were affected by identity fraud or identity theft. 14 million people. Are you one of those 14 million? Has your personal information been exposed in a data breach or a hack? Well, the statistics say most likely. The past few years have given us record-breaking breaches. You see only a few of the big ones listed here. The Marriott hotel chain exposed data on 500 million guests in a recent breach. The credit reporting agency Equifax suffered a massive breach that affected 143 million Americans. And then Yahoo, the big email company, took first place for the biggest breach in history with news of a hack that affected every single Yahoo account. That's 3 billion with a B, 3 billion users. And these are only some of the breaches that have occurred in the last few years. Given those statistics, it's likely that your personal information has landed into the hands of a hacker. In addition, new threats are exposed every day. Even as we sit here now, a vast array of cyber attacks are pounding at the walls of security networks built to protect you and your digital persona on the internet. And what I'm going to say now sounds a bit dramatic, but it's completely true. A world of dark forces and criminal networks conspire day and night to steal your username and your password, obtain your social security number, open credit cards in your name, drain your bank accounts, and seize your computer to hold it ransom. The authors of the book Cybersecurity and Cyber War contend that a cyber world war is underway, and we're all involved. Our biggest problem, they say, is that we face a cybersecurity knowledge gap. And that's why we're here today. I'm worried for all of us, myself, my family, my clients, my community. It's a serious growing problem, but I don't think it's a reason for despair. Most people don't realize how vulnerable they are and what they can do to maximize their security. By the end of the presentation today, I guarantee you that you're going to have a better understanding of what you need to do to protect yourself and your family and your business while these cybersecurity hackers are out there attacking us on a regular basis. So I'm going to help you create a personal cybersecurity system that will keep you and your family safe. First, we're going to take a short quiz to determine your current cybersecurity score. We'll do that just in a couple minutes. Then, once you know the vulnerabilities, I'm going to teach you some new cybersecurity rules. These are the actions you can take that are going to boost your score. But way more importantly than your score, it's going to boost your protection for your identity. And then at the end of the presentation, I'll ask you to fill out an action pledge. You'll pick 3 actions to take away and to work on right away. And if any of you know from experience, you can kind of listen or you can read or watch lots of things. It's when you put it into action is where you really learn a new skill. And so that's what we hope to do today is get you to not just be on this call and hear the things that we're talking about, but actually put them into action and make some great change happen. So let's discover your cybersecurity score. Now, earlier in our email campaign leading up to this webinar, we emailed a cybersecurity quick reference guide. So hopefully you have that. If not, there's also going to be one that's posted in the Zoom webinar. So be on the lookout for that. It's also available on the Pointe Wealth website under our resources section. So I'm going to take you through this cybersecurity quick reference guide, and we're going to take you through and ask you to score this. And you can just kind of do a mental score or write it down, whatever works for you. If you have this printed, you can obviously write on it. But let's just go through each one. Each one of these answers, if you answer yes, gives you 5 points. Okay, so let's start with number 1. I have one email address that I use exclusively for my online financial accounts. So just my financial accounts and nothing else. So if you do that, give yourself 5 points. The second one, I have two-step verification. Now you may also hear this referred to as two-factor authentication or dual-factor authentication. So you use two-step verification for your email and your other financial online accounts. Okay, so if you do that, you get 5 points for that. Now you can spot the difference between dangerous free public Wi-Fi and useful secure free public Wi-Fi. So there's a difference. There's definitely public Wi-Fi's available, but some are better than others. Can you recognize them? If you're not really sure, then don't give yourself 5 points for this one. I understand how to tell if my home Wi-Fi network is vulnerable to hackers and how to boost the network security. Okay, so if you have a router at home and you have your, say, DSL or your cable internet coming into that, and you've really never messed with that router, I'm going to say your answer is probably no to that one. But if you've gone into the settings and you know how to determine if it's secure, you might get 5 points for that one. So kind of think about that router sitting over there on your cabinet. Okay, the next one. Whenever any money leaves my bank accounts or my credit cards are charged, I'm alerted to the transaction. So not through the mail, but through your phone, ideally through text messaging or possibly email. You get a notification every time there's a transaction. So if you do that, great, give yourself 5 points. Okay, next one. I have complete control over my credit files at the 3 big credit bureaus. So that's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, because I've placed them on the highest security level, which we would call a credit freeze. So if you've done that, great. That's very important, though, that to give yourself the 5 points on that one, you have to have your credit reports frozen for all 3 credit bureaus, not just one of them. Okay, the next one. I've confirmed with the credit bureaus that my minor children, maybe grandchildren, if you are involved in their lives in that kind of capacity, have not been they've not been victims of identity theft and frozen their credit files. So now many states allow you to freeze the credit files of minor children. So that's something to really think hard about for all the little ones in your life. I run an updated antivirus software program on my computers and devices. So the key there is probably updated. Are you keeping that renewed? So if you do, great. Give yourself some credit for that and you get 5 points. And then I always make sure that my computer and devices have the most up-to-date software programs, including operating systems, browsers, Microsoft Office updates, iTunes Player, virus protection, wireless router, and Adobe programs. So for a minute, let's kind of pause. That wireless router sitting over there on the shelf, maybe not frequently, but they will have firmware updates available. And that's also important to do that. So not just your computer gets an update. You periodically want to go in and make sure your router is updating. And if possible, set that up for an automatic update. And the next one, I have a system for ensuring that I can recover from a ransomware phishing attack without paying an extortion fee to a criminal. So we're going to talk about ransomware in a few minutes, but if you've got a good backup system and we'll kind of define good in a minute, but if you really feel strongly that you've got a good backup system, give yourself 5 points. Now, so you get 5 points for each of the yes scores. So now let's take a second and score ourselves. How well did we do? So if you have more than 40 points, you're doing really well. You are probably in the upper echelon of people prepared for cybersecurity. Now, if you're over 25 points and not greater than 40 points, you're doing really probably pretty okay. Okay, so not great, but okay. So what would I call that? Well, I'd say you probably need to shine a light on the areas that you have some deficiencies and bring those up to speed, and then you really will be doing very well. Now, under 20, and I would say that you may have to stay after class and clean the erasers. So that's really a dated reference right there. How does anybody even use chalk anymore? But seriously, if you have a lower score, no worries. Let's not despair. You can definitely very quickly improve that score. And again, most importantly, protect yourself. All right, so let's move into part 2, learning the new cybersecurity rules. I believe you can develop 3 cybersecurity mindsets to strengthen and maintain your cybersecurity so that staying safe is simple. And that's going to be the key. We all know from experience, this tech stuff can get complicated. And once complication enters, often our interest wanes. So we really want to work hard on keeping things simple, but we also want to be diligent and make sure our systems are strong. The 3 mindsets cover various parts of your life and overlap to form a sweet spot of actions that will boost your cybersecurity score. Each mindset alone provides greater security, but the combination of the 3 really makes you secure. The mindsets are secrecy, omniscience, and mindfulness. This is not a yoga class, by the way. Each mindset contains a group of actions for people to take called the new cybersecurity rules. I'm going to explain all 3 mindsets and the associated rules. Let's take a look at the first mindset. We all need more secrecy in our lives, and that is why our first key idea. Adopting a new level of secrecy can boost your security and cyber confidence. The secrecy mindset entails keeping your personal and private data private. With all the massive amounts of data breaches suffered by corporations and governments, we need to act as if our personal data already exists in the hands of cyber criminals, because it likely does. We all need to draw a tighter ring of security around all of our personal data, and that starts with your email. Our email address is the key to our digital lives, much like your key on your keychain is the key to your house. We share it with countless businesses, organizations, and people. If you use the internet for any amount of time, you've entered your email address at a host of online accounts for shopping, traveling, exercising, gaming, dating, and more. We don't think twice to give out our email address. But having your email address in so many databases puts you at significant risk. Hackers routinely breach the security networks of many organizations that hold your primary email address. That stolen personal data, paired with poor email security, leads to disaster. The CEO of identitytheftsecurity.com explains it this way. It's been said that if you own a person's email, you own the person. This means that once your email's hacked, pretty much your entire digital life is up for grabs. So even if you're done your due diligence and you have all of your passwords are different, if your email is hacked and it's associated with your other online accounts, the hacker could simply use a reset password and get access to all of your other accounts. Now, you may not care if someone hacks into your Food Network or Yelp account, but you certainly don't want your online banking exposed in the same way. That is why you need to create a separate secret email for your financial accounts. Now, for those of you who've heard me talk over the years about ways to protect yourself, this should be even a new recommendation that you've never heard from me. This, I believe, takes all of our security up to a much higher level. So even though internally We use really great systems, and all of our financial partners use really great systems. This is a tip that we think has just a lot of validity to protect yourself better. So this account that you use, this email account that you use with your financial accounts, should be unidentifiable. Now that's kind of strange to say that, but you want it to be unidentifiable. You don't want to use your first name, your last name, don't use your initials or any of your other identifying information. It should also be protected by a strong and unique password. Emphasis on unique. A separate email address reduces your digital footprint, and if your primary non-financial email address is exposed in a hack, it will not be connected to your financial accounts. This is a key step in boosting your security. Now, I know you're probably sitting there going, Derek, I don't want to open another email account, but I think this is the wave of the future to better protect yourself. And our email addresses need to be protected by good, strong passwords. But we all face something called the password paradox. Easy to remember passwords are easy to break. Hard to break passwords are hard to remember. So many passwords we use are child's play for hackers. Computer power gets stronger and stronger with every passing year. This means that bad guys can figure out your password in no time flat. How long does it take a computer to crack 1,000 weak passwords? 17 minutes. About 17 minutes. Now there's probably less than 100 people on our call. So just think about that. How fast can a supercomputer crank out easy passwords? And that's the key again, easy passwords. That's complicated, that's a whole game changer. But easy passwords are nothing for a computer. So one reason for this is that people choose passwords that have less than 6 characters, or they use names, dictionary words, or other common passwords like password, or the one I really love is 123456. Please tell me none of you are using that password. So these are the ways to think about passwords. You ought to try to create a mnemonic. So a mnemonic phrase with numbers and symbols thrown in. So what's an example of a mnemonic password? For instance, a woman I know takes the first line of a prayer she says every day and uses the first letter of each of the first 10 words of the prayer. She adds some numbers and symbols and has a very strong password. Or you could use a poem, song lyrics, or a phrase. So you see an example on your screen right now. Or you could try this idea. You could create a password that embodies a goal you're trying to reach, such as exercising, quitting smoking, or saving money. This is especially good when you need to change your passwords every 6 months. Each time you type the word, your password, instead of it being a negative drag on your brain, it will positively reinforce your specific goal. So you see an example of that running every day. Now you can get as creative as you like. Remember though, to drop out some letters and replace them with symbols to boost your password strength. Now, by the way, on that cybersecurity reference guide that is available on the webinar and we emailed to you, on the back side of it, there's a little grid on there with a conversion chart that will give you some ideas on maybe how to convert in a sequence that you can remember. Another technique is called the diceware method. Here, you roll a dice 5 times in recording each number. Repeat the process 4 more times so you have a 5 5-digit numbers. Then go to www.diceware.com. That's D-I-C-E, where, W-A-R-E.com, and match your 5-digit numbers to the list of 7,776 word list. These random 5 words become your password. Now you may be thinking, how will I remember all of that? We all know the amount of passwords we have is growing. it's nearly impossible to remember a unique, strong password for each and every one of our accounts, which is why I recommend a password manager. And so of all these ideas, this is the one that I advocate, and this is the one I've been using for several years now, at least 3 years, I'd say. A password manager stores all of your passwords in an encrypted file stored on your computer or in the cloud. The file is protected with a master password, the only password you'll have to remember. So then each other site has a super strong password that the password manager system keeps secure. And then you also use dual factor authentication with that. So we really think a password manager for many people makes a lot of sense. We think they're relatively easy to use. There's a number of them, not endorsing them, but we've had a lot of success using LastPass. There's other ones that are out there that have different ratings, but there's a number of the very good ones. I would just investigate them and look at what works best for your situation. Okay, creating strong passwords, though, is just the first step in your account protection plan. We need to put another layer of security on the all-important accounts such as email, online banking, social media, and more. That extra layer is a relatively new trend in online security called two-step verification or two-factor authentication. It should be added to any account that you have that supports technology. So here I will kind of drill down. I would use this with anybody that offers it. So anything even non-financial, just because anything that holds your data is a source for data mining for criminals. So I want all of my identity stuff locked down to the extent possible. So I use two-factor authentication wherever possible. And you'll notice if you ever kind of see me logging in a site, I always have to have my phone nearby because that's giving me that two-factor authentication code that I need. So the idea being, somebody could even have your password, but if they don't have your cell phone or your two-factor authentication device as well, they can't get any further. So that's where the enhancement is. So that with this approach, when you start to log into an account online, you're sent a short-lived one-time password. You must use the code to finish logging in. You can receive this code via text message or something called an Authenticator app. The Authenticator app is the most secure option as it's more difficult for hackers to compromise. Some popular Authenticator apps are Google Authenticator and Microsoft Authenticator. This method stops your accounts from getting hacked because it requires two separate things: something you know, your password, and something you have, the temporary code. So even if a hacker has your password, he's not going to have access without that dual factor or that text message. So, and if you don't have to worry about entering a code every time you log into your account from your device, on many sites you can designate safe devices where you only need to enter the verification code every 30 days when logging on from the device. Now, my personal preference, that is a convenience there. So if I have my iPhone, I can say, hey, remember my iPhone. And then when I log into my financial website, it's not going to ask me for that dual factor authentication. That's not my recommendation. I have mine set up where every single time I log in, I have to use the code. That's the most secure way to do it. And I think that's the prudent way. Is it a bit of a hassle? It is. I will not deny that. But I think it's worth the hassle to protect myself. And that's what I would want for you too. So let's move away from passwords now. Let's talk about Wi-Fi. So we now know how to lock down our password. Let's transition into making sure that we're on good Wi-Fi networks. It's certainly true that we all love free internet access when we're out and about in town and we want to stay connected. But the free connection can end up being costly. These free networks are completely open and hackers can gain access to anything you do while connected. Your email, your credit card number, your bank account. You see the pattern. It can get very bad. When connected to a free public Wi-Fi, avoid making financial transactions or checking your email. Instead, use your smartphone as a hotspot. When you do that, you'll be using your data, which provides a private connection rather than a public Wi-Fi network or wireless network. Now, if you need to connect regularly on the go, we really love the idea of using a VPN. That's a virtual private network. Okay, this is device allows you to create your own private network anywhere you go. So we've been advocating this for at least a year or so with our clients. We'd love for you to use a VPN, and this used to be a lot more complicated, but it's not so bad now. There's programs, Nord, NORD.com is one that we think is reasonably effective to use and secure, and all these systems you're going to hear, if you Google them, you're going to hear cases of them having their own security issues. So you want to definitely do your own due diligence and get comfortable with the provider that you're using. But what a VPN network is doing is it's essentially putting another wall outside of your network in front of you. So in theory, you could be sitting in, say, Starbucks or Panera, and a hacker could be a couple chairs down from you. But if they are using software to scan the restaurant to see whose computers are on the network, your network would show up as something from out of state. They wouldn't see your computer locally. That's the power of VPN. It really makes it hard for people to spot your activity on the internet, and that's why we really like VPN a lot. Now, also, encrypting your data during transmission is crucial. Think of encryption as locking a box of paper files that you carry from one building to another across state lines. If you left your car unlocked, the cabinet might get stolen, but being locked down or encrypted, they might not be able to get into it. Encrypting your files it makes it really incredibly challenging for hackers to intercept and unlock your data while it's in use. So famed NSA whistleblower Ed Snowden uses a program called Signal to encrypt his data. Services like Proton Email also advertise their encrypted email delivery. You may have noticed anytime we send you communication that has any personal identifying information, we use a secure email service that we use. I would advocate any of your financial professionals that you work with, you should insist that they be encrypting your email and all of your communication that has vital information. This is something that the financial community, I think, has done a good job with, and I think the healthcare industry has as well. But there still are some outlier providers who've resisted this. And anytime they're transmitting your information unencrypted, it's just too easy for hackers to gain access to that. So really making sure your financial folks and all these folks who have your data are transmitting your data securely is very, very important. Well, let's turn to your own home network. Now, we oftentimes think our home is our safest place, and it probably is in a large extent, but it's very dependent upon what you've done with your network. Your home wireless network can open the doors to you and your family's digital life if your router is not properly protected. There are 4 main things you must do to lock down your router and Wi-Fi network from hackers. Now, I'll warn you, there are some of the more technical actions you're going to have to take. Don't be discouraged, though, if it sounds difficult to you. If you're confused, I'll help try to advise you and get you in touch with tech people who can help you out with this. To do these steps, you'll have to log into the router's IP address. If you do not know how or what your IP address is, you can find it usually in the manual or oftentimes on the bottom of the device. But here's the key. First, you need to change the default username and password. Hackers know these and will use these to try to break into your network. Pick a strong password. Encrypt your router. be sure to select the strongest encryption setting for your router, WPA2 or WPA3. WEP, WEP, is no longer considered secure, and you should replace your router if it only has the option of WEP security. Disable Wi-Fi protected setup. That's called WPS. This feature is the one that allows you to quickly connect to your network with a short passcode rather than having to type the whole password. But it can lead strangers gaining access. If you don't have the option to fully disable this feature, see if you can limit the number of attempts a person can make to log in. Now, WPS is another one of those convenience features. So we create these kind of nice secure systems, and then we add things like WPS to make it easier. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose. So that's why we've really kind of taken the position that WPS is a bad idea for your networks. And then update your router firmware. So that's just fancy for software. The majority of routers come with outdated software, which leaves your network vulnerable to attack. Updating your firmware sounds like a daunting task, but it's really not that bad. You can follow the instructions in your user manual, but once you're logged into your router, it will pop up with a menu of options, and usually updating the firmware is one of the easier ones to find, and just setting a regular schedule of checking that and having it updated is a very good idea. I think in my home network, I've got a little reminder on my phone to just check that monthly now. And I feel pretty good about that because most months there's not an update. So if it was updated more regularly, I would probably check it more regularly, but once a month seems to be doing the job. So we need to know what is going on our cybersecurity at all times. That's why the second key idea is completing certain actions can help you achieve financial cyber omniscience and thwart fraud. Achieving omniscience, and what I mean by that is financial omniscience or all-knowingness, will put you at the center of your financial life. And that starts with using technology so you're totally aware of what funds are leaving your accounts and being charged to your accounts at all times. And that's not hopeless. You can protect your payment cards from the swarm of hackers and data breaches. Sign up for sign up for alert notifications with your bank and credit card companies. By doing so, you'll get a text or email alert every time a charge or withdrawal is made. I had a client years ago, I made this recommendation, and he actually called me from Colorado and said he really appreciated that advice because he got a charge when he was out of town. It pinged on his phone. He's got a text message, and it was somebody had bought something that he wasn't familiar with, and he spotted very quickly somebody had access to his credit card and immediately notified his credit card issuer and stopped it. And the credit card issuers have gotten very good at this technology, so they're spotting most of the fraud now, but they don't catch it all, and they need our help. So this is a kind of a two-pronged attempt. Credit card companies are doing a great job with it, and then you can do it. And I think if all of us pitch in together, we can really limit how much of this goes on. So setting those text message alerts up is a very good idea. So this can often be done on your bank accounts, but not every bank offers it. So you'll have to check with your bank. But most credit card companies now do offer this. You'll just have to go in online to your credit card account or your bank account, and under the preferences area, typically it's there to set up alerts. Now they may have all kinds of different alert options. The key one that I'm focused on is any transaction. So $1, 15 cents, I don't really care because I want to know what every financial transaction is, because any transaction of any level could be an identity theft. It's not so much about the dollar amount, it's about the fact somebody has access to my files. That's why I want the alert set to any amount. Okay, so this is absolutely critical to everyone's cybersecurity. By default, our credit files are open, which just seems very odd. So our Number one, the big three credit bureaus kind of, you would think we're their customer, but we're really not. It's the credit companies, the card issuers, the banks who order our credit scores. They're really the customer. And I'm not really sure what you call us. We just happen to be the product, I guess. So your credit files are already open. So that means anyone with enough information to impersonate you may be able to open a new line of credit in your name. It happens all the time and is a major source of identity theft. And when you consider how many private and public organizations have been hacked, institutions we've trusted with our social security numbers, employment history, and other details about our financial lives, you need to be worried about the state of your credit file at the big three agencies. So we need to take back control of your credit through a credit freeze. So a credit freeze locks your credit file with a PIN. And you'll do this at each of the three credit bureaus. No new credit can be issued in your name unless you lift the freeze with a special PIN. You'll have to contact each of the credit bureaus separately. So as of September 21st, 2018, credit freezes are free in every state thanks to a new federal law. Previously, the cost to lock your credit files was $10. Now it's free. A credit freeze puts you in control. It's way more secure than credit monitoring or a fraud alert, both of which will alert you if there's credit's been issued in your name, but it won't prevent that. That's why we really love the credit freeze. But it's not just the credit file that you need to be concerned about. Experts say 500,000 children suffer from identity theft every year. Why? Well, their clean records are attracted to thieves looking to open new accounts without any issues, and the theft can go unnoticed for years as parents and guardians often don't think to check their children's records. But childhood identity theft can lead to a lifetime of fraud and ruined credit. The first step to protecting your children is ensuring they have no credit report by contacting all three of the credit bureaus. So again, that's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Parents should send a letter including copies of their children's birth certificates, listing them as their parent, their driver's license, and proof of address to all three of the credit reporting agencies, and ask for a manual search of their children's social security number. If no report is found, you're in luck. You should still periodically check on your children's status, however, and if a report is found, it's usually a sign that your child has been victimized. Ask the credit bureaus to immediately place a credit freeze on your children's record and investigate further. You can also now request a credit freeze for your children in every state. Previously, it was dependent on your state of residence, but now that's also a federal law. So again, you're going to have to notify all three of the bureaus to do that. Our third cybersecurity key idea has to do with mindfulness. Achieving a sense of mindfulness when it comes to cybersecurity allows you to stay alert without becoming fatigued. What does that mean? Well, we need to be in a state of relaxed alertness when dealing with cybersecurity. Fighter pilots have an acronym for this that they call OODA. It stands for observation, orientation, decision, and action. Zen masters use the phrase mindfulness. When Google completed their own analysis of worldwide security practices, they also recommended mindfulness as a key part of cybersecurity. Mindfulness relates to your day-to-day cybersecurity practices. 9 out of 10 security experts say running updated software is necessary for strong security. Out-of-date software allows hackers to plant viruses and malicious software on your devices. Yet, 40% of computer users don't update their software in a timely fashion. And security experts say 75 to 80% of computer hacks they see relate to outdated software. Hackers exploit security holes in unpatched software, which allows them to install malware and viruses on your unprotected devices. This malware can record everything you do or kidnap your computer for ransom. So if you want to be sure that all your software and programs on your devices are up to date, you just go in and you get into the registry and or the programs and make sure that they're set to automatically update. That's kind of a key thing. And Windows machines are largely set up that way now, but you really want to make sure each of your applications is that way. So that includes your browsers, Microsoft Office, Adobe, all these different kinds of programs. Now, you can set these up on the auto update, and typically they'll just do that nightly now. So that's really our recommendation, is to have your computers do that as regularly as the system will allow. It's also a really important idea to have a good antivirus program on your computer. You're going to want to make sure that that also stays up to date. Viruses change so rapidly, unfortunately, a bit like human viruses, as we all know. And computer viruses are the same way. These hackers identify vulnerabilities, they morph the viruses to make them more effective. So the softwares that protect our machines have to morph as quickly, or try to do it as quickly. And so your antivirus programs it's just a must, they have to be updated. And periodically, go through the programs on your devices and uninstall anything you don't use. The fewer programs you have, the fewer holes for hackers to attack. One type of malware I mentioned on the previous slides kidnaps your computer and holds it for ransom. This is a real troubling type of identity theft called ransomware, and it is really one of the biggest threats today. In this attack, hackers infect your device with malware that encrypts everything on your computer. You can no longer have access to any of your files. In order to get your files back, you have to pay the hackers a Bitcoin ransom. In order to avoid paying ransom for cyber crooks, you need to follow the rule of three, meaning you need to back up all of your files and data in 3 different places. The first is on your computer or device. Next, you need to save a copy of your files and data to a physical backup device, something like an external hard drive. Lastly, then you ought to have it in a secure cloud service. So when you do that, you have access to your files on a regular basis on your computer. If that would fail, you have an external device that's right there nearby that you could just patch into and check for those files and move them back. But what happens if your house gets hit by a tornado or a fire affects it? You want to have cloud-based storage. And then that way, if it's behind a secure cloud storage, that's your ultimate fail-safe to make sure you get access to your files. And then in the case of ransomware, what you've done is you've laid the groundwork to have your files off of your computer before the ransomware attack happens. And so you can then just say, you know what, forget that computer, I'll just reboot it, or reinstall the operating system, and then go back to, say, my cloud storage and reload the data back to the date prior to the ransomware attack. That's the key of having multiple sources of data. So ransomware attacks are normally spread through a method called phishing. Phishing messages are emails that impersonate a legitimate company or person and are designed to steal your personal information or install malware on your machine through a malicious link. Hackers are sending out 94 billion of these messages every day. Most get caught in your spam filter, but some find their way to your inbox. There's a 10-second cybersecurity rule that will help you fend off the phishers. The acronym is email, and it stands for examine message and inspect links. So that's a big one. So examine message and inspect links. So let's take it one step at a time. The first half of the acronym, examine message. starts with the subject line. Phishers try to get us to react quickly to an urgent message. Often they'll make the subject line something frightening, such as warning, account closed, or security alert. Some are more subtle, but still require you to take action. For example, mail delivery failed, or return message to sender, or incoming fax received. Subject lines like this should alert us that this may be a phishing attack. Next, we need to discover the true sender of the email. Phishers can spoof, and that spoofing is the key. It's where they're basically mimicking a real email address. They're impersonating the email address. So phishers can spoof the from line to appear to be a legitimate business or organization. You can determine the true sender by hovering your mouse over the display name. A small box will appear with the true email address. Now, I'll prepare you, that's a great technique, but that's not foolproof either. Spoofing has gone another level now where it's hard to even identify the original domain name of the fictitious email. So you may have somebody who replicates your email address in the from line, and then you hover over it and it looks legitimate. And sometimes those are fraudulent. And unfortunately, you have to go deeper into the kind of the email thread to find out what the real source is. But this technique will probably catch a very large percentage of spoofing emails. So continue on though, other suspicious things that you want to look for include greetings that refer to you as customer, or sir, or madam instead of your name, poor grammar, or a vague signature line with false contact information. You should also be suspicious of unsolicited emails with attachments. Never click to open any unsolicited attachments. What presents itself as a resume, receipt, or payment could be an EXE, that's an execution file, that can plant a virus on your computer or seizes it for ransom. So this rule of really taking your time on emails is so valuable. And this is one that's so easy to ignore and just kind of put off, but it will keep you out of more trouble probably than almost anything with regard to email. So we all know the Nigerian princess emails. We all know now that those are all bad. But the emails now are much more sophisticated. They're much more well done, and they're very difficult to spot. So slowing down using the 10-second rule will help immensely. So the second part of the 10-second email rule has to do with the links in the message. The second half of the email requires you to inspect links within the message. Like you did with the sender, hover your mouse over any links or hyperlink text. Be sure the link is truly directing you to the correct website. If it looks fishy, delete the email. You can always contact the organization directly to ask if they sent you the email. This is an action that needs to become part of your daily cybersecurity practices. Make it a habit so you can thwart off phishers without even thinking about it. Make it kind of your muscle memory. And now part 3, taking action, putting it all together and putting it into action. So that not only does this become kind of part of your muscle memory and become easier, but it's so important that we take away from sessions like this actionable things that we can do to improve our cybersecurity. And we want to really get this into our daily routine, and we want to become more proficient at it so it doesn't feel like work. If it feels too much like work, we all know from experience, we'll just kind of delay and procrastinate implementing these things. So we've learned a lot. So let's kind of summarize the things that we've talked about. We touched on creating a secret email address for use with all of your financial institutions. I think that's a great idea. I think it's It's really kind of that's an evolving strategy. It's a little more work for you. I know it's one more account to check, but that's a real great way to protect yourself financially. Using super strong passwords. Now, we gave you the mnemonic approach or the password manager approach, I think are the two probably most compelling ideas. But upping your email game is huge. You have to think about this. If you're using repetitive passwords across your accounts, the computer has to hack one time. Once they've got it figured out, it's not really hard for them to get out to all these websites and just test your email and your password. That's why using a unique password is so important with all of your different accounts. Using that two-factor authentication is another big thing. If you're not utilizing that, that would be another great step to take to start really elevating your cybersecurity game. Being very mindful about Wi-Fi networks, and making sure you're on secure networks. Strengthen your own home network, making sure that firmware is updated, making sure you have the proper security and not using that default username and password. Very important. How about text message alerts on your financial accounts? Those bank accounts and credit cards, getting those notifications sent to your phone every time they happen. It's a great technique. Credit freezes. I've been talking about this for a while, so I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing about it, but credit freezes still are one of the very best things that you can do. So if you've not done that, and I know there are things that will be a bit of a hassle if you lock your credit reports down, but I can assure you, way less of a hassle than having your identity frozen. Updating your software, making sure your devices, your firmware on your router, all of your computer devices, all of your programs, keeping those up to date, very important. Strong backups, making sure your data, all those important data files need to be backed up and secure. And then lastly, the 10-second email rule to examine email messages. Love that tip. Slow it down, hover over those from addresses, hover over those hyperlinks, and I think you're really going to improve your situation when you do that. Whoops. So what I would invite you to do is just take a second, kind of think about some of these items, and maybe just jot down a note or two of what things do you want to implement first. And now's also a good time, if you have any questions, we'd invite you to put those into the chat box. We have a few minutes remaining, and I'll certainly do my best to answer all of those. Okay, so I've got one question about cellular networks. So, are you safe to conduct financial transactions on a cellular service Wi-Fi as opposed to a public Wi-Fi? And okay, then there's a second question. I'll answer that one second. So, okay, so I'm actually going to probably even walk back a little bit what I said earlier. So if I'm given the choice between a free public Wi-Fi and my cellular service, absolutely I want to stay on my cellular network. But I'm also a big proponent of these virtual private networks, and it's beyond my understanding of the tech behind this, but my understanding is cellular networks are now also under threat of being spoofed. And so there are situations that have come to my attention where people have actually been on a cellular network that they thought was their network, because most of us aren't really checking that. We're on the network, and somehow we end up on these kind of spoofing cellular networks, and those are not secure. Those are obviously intended to hack us. So more and more when we're doing data transactions, especially with financial transactions, that VPN is such a critical part of it. And it's another thing you have to do, and it's another level of sophistication. But I think if you can learn how to do that, the programs are becoming very intuitive. So what used to be very complicated with VPN is not nearly as complicated. So I really do recommend, if I'm on a cellular device, I would add the layer of VPN in addition to that. Okay, what should you do if you accidentally click on a scam email? Yeah, that's a great question. So the bad news I think I've got, it's going to be work. So if you really want to protect yourself well, if you hit on something that you're pretty sure is a scam email, if you clicked a link, there's a great chance that they've captured your data. So the first line of defense I would have is I would start changing passwords. Okay, and so that's where the work is. But again, if you've never had your identity stolen, then you don't know. But it's painful. Anybody I know who's had it stolen in what I'll call a relatively big way, they've really had a difficult time cleaning up their files. So changing your emails, as daunting as that seems, is way better than cleaning up bad fraud. And that's where password managers, I think, are very effective. So I think the first order of defense would be I would change all of my passwords. And certainly if you can try to figure out, well, what was scammy about it? If it was what I thought was one of my financial institutions, I would certainly notify my financial institution, say, hey, there's something out here that looks like it came from you guys, and they'll start working hard to try to, ferret that out and figure out where that came from. So those would be the two things I would look at. Okay, we have just a couple minutes here. Let me see what else we have. Do you have a recommendation for an email provider for business use only? Is Google Mail adequate? Google Mail now offers an encryption service. So I do like Gmail. I think that's a pretty good option. I do think that Proton email, it's a little, it's not free, but Proton email, from my understanding, really is super secure. So if I were going to create a new or a new email for financial organizations, and then I wanted it encrypted, I'd probably look hard at that Proton email, and certainly talk to some tech people. I mean, this is obviously not what I do, so I want to make sure that I give you that disclaimer. But through the research that we have done, these are the solutions that we've been steered to, and so I think Proton would be a good one. But I think Gmail is still a decent option if you're using the encryption on it, you're using two-factor authentication, and you have super strong passwords. And last question, will this presentation be available to the listeners? It will be. We will wrap up the call here, and then we will get it recorded and put it on our website. It should be out there by tomorrow, but it might even be out there this afternoon. You'll just go to our website, out to the webinar section, and the recording, and all of our webinars that we've done will be out there that you can go back and replay. Okay, to conclude, our next webinar, Monday, June 28th at 4 p.m., we're going to talk about how to hack-proof your smartphone. We really think that's kind of the next level of this, because more and more we're all on our smartphones. And so we can talk about all this computer stuff, but at the end of the day, if we're using our smartphones, we've left out an important part. So I want to make sure that we also tackle that one too. So we will we'll discuss hack-proofing your smartphone on June 28th. Remember to invite friends and family. This is open to anybody that you think would benefit. This is purely educational. We just want to help people as much as we can, and we really appreciate you being with us today. So I hope you found this to be helpful, informative. I hope that you take some of these things, put them into action to really enhance your security. If there's any way that we can help, we'll steer you to the people that we know are kind of the experts in this field, but we'll do what we can to answer your questions too. But please enhance your security. And then, as always, when we close these out, continue to be well. We're thinking about you. And it's going to be another good day here as we move forward through this COVID crisis. All right, take care and be well.